Good afternoon, members of the Finance Committee. I have a request here from the Housing Authority for financial assistance for the acquisition and rehabilitation of a small residential property on Upper State Street. Property is at 2941 State Street, so it's there between Alamar and Calle Crespas. And I can show you an aerial photograph here. So it's a mixed residential commercial area, lots of multifamily residential buildings in the area, and this is the CVS drugstore parking lot. So it's right up on Upper State there. It's a two-story building with 6 one-bedroom apartments, and they're good-sized apartments. They're 780 square feet in size. It's a 60-year-old building. It's in good condition. The seller has been a participant in the city's Section 8 program for a number of years, and this is an opportunity to add this property to the city's permanent affordable housing stock. The property was appraised at $900,000, and the Housing Authority has negotiated a sale price of $860,000. So that differential, that $40,000, then is a tax-deductible gift that the seller is making to the Housing Authority. The seller has asked for a carryback loan and in the amount of $500,000. And what will happen then is the Housing Authority will issue a tax-exempt bond or tax-exempt revenue note, and then the seller will acquire the note, and the Housing Authority will make payments directly to the seller, a stream of payments over a course of 15 years. And the staff report indicates it's a 10-year term, and it's actually a 15-year term. I was misinformed. So so as a 15-year term, it's going to have 5% interest, and it's fully amortized. So the Housing Authority has asked the redevelopment agency then for a loan of $360,000. And this would be one of our typical loans. It would have a 55-year term. It would have a 3% interest rate, and payments would be made on a residual receipts basis, which means that to the extent that the project has positive cash flow, then payments would be made on the RDA loan. So, when you analyze what positive cash flow means, that would be after you deduct for expenses and payments on that seller carryback loan. At the end of the 55-year term, there would be a balloon payment. Now, in this particular case, we stand to get some decent repayment on this starting in year 16 when they pay off that seller carryback loan. At that point, we should see a big jump in what we get. But in the early years, we'll get a nominal amount of repayment on the loan. But then in year 16, it should pick up. The security on this loan would be a deed of trust. It's recorded in second position, and since we've got an appraisal at $900,000, our loan would be fully secured. The Housing Authority also wants to do some renovations of the building. They're asking for a CDBG grant of $90,000 to do that, and in the initial stages, they want to do some exterior work in the building. It would be like the stairs and balconies, doors and windows, stucco and paint, and then one of the units is vacant, so they're going to completely renovate that unit, and then they're going to take one of the existing tenants and move them into that newly renovated unit, and then they're going to work on that unit that person vacated. And so in that way, they hope to do the renovation one unit at a time without doing any kind of relocation of the tenants. So that's the plan. And this is just like what they did at 633 De La Vina, which was recently completed. Now, the Housing Authority may return later for additional financial assistance as they get further along in the renovation. But for now, they're just going to do the $90,000 to get the ball rolling here. All the tenants are currently low-income tenants. They're Section 8 recipients. They'll be able to stay as long as they desire. Rents are at between $11.80 and $12.50 per month, and they pay 30% of their income, with the Section 8 then paying the difference as a federal subsidy. We would require a 60-year covenant to make sure that the rents would then stay affordable over that time period. But with the Housing Authority, that's their mission. We're not too worried about them raising rents on people. So So we asked the Finance Committee recommend approval of the $360,000 RDA loan and the $90,000 CDBG rehab grant. This would be then a total subsidy of $450,000, or about $75,000 per unit, which we find to be reasonable. And this would be a valuable permanent addition to the city's affordable housing stock. That concludes my presentation. I'm here for questions, as is Grandpa-to-be Rob Pearson here.
And just so that the public understands, and maybe if any other property owners that want to do something like this understand, the reason why this is done in this way is that so that the current property owner only has to only has the taxable income of what comes in per year, from the payments, or why is it structured in that way?
Yes, it's structured in this way so that the seller then does not receive a one big cash infusion for the sale of the property. Instead, they get a 15-year stream of payments over time. So that's exactly correct, yes.
Okay. And other questions from the committee members? Councilmember Francisco.
Thank you. So this money would come out of RDA's 20% that needs to be allocated to affordable housing. Is that correct?
Yes, Councilmember Francisco, it would come out of the agency's housing set-aside for affordable housing.
Where are we at on the housing set-aside right now? How much of that 20% has been allocated?
Oh, Stephen.
Mr. Falstich, the question is maybe how much is in the account currently, the 20% set-aside account?
Council Member Williams, I believe that the current balance is around $7 or $8 million right now, and we don't know exactly because I can't remember which projects have been approved and reduced that, but we can get you a more accurate number. But we track it closely. I just don't have it on the tip of my tongue.
So we don't have to spend 20% in any given year. It can carry over.
That's correct.
Okay.
Unlike some federal funds that have expenditure deadlines, we don't face that. And in fact, an example of where we need to accrue it is when there's a project like the St. Vincent's property where the total subsidy was much more than one particular year, so we accrued it over several years.
Okay. Okay, great. Thanks. Just looking at this deal naively, 5% tax-free interest sounds like a very good deal. And not that there's anything wrong with a good deal for the seller. I'm just curious, is it possible that we could have gotten a better deal for the RDA? Does that, I mean...
Councilmember Francisco, I believe the terms of the financing were part of the negotiation on the sale price. And so we were able to get a price that was below appraised value as a result of that. So that was already incorporated, and we have realized the benefit of that.
Maybe.
I've seen a lot of these projects happen, and I see from a per unit standpoint, 75,000 per unit tends to be really low for our subsidy to be able to acquire and or build housing. But if you...
Rob Pearson speaking for the Housing Authority. Councilmember Francisco, it's a good question. We sought out what it would be to get conventional financing for this purchase, and we were getting pricing of around 5.5% to 6%, and the banks weren't all that interested in doing a loan, so we found that this was the quickest way. I would say the appraisal on this property was on the low end. I thought the range, looking at market conditions, was almost up to $1.2 million, and we're getting it at $860,000. The appraisal came in at $900,000, which I thought was low, and I disclosed that to the seller.
Okay.
I think the 5% it's similar to what we did on the financing for 633 De La Vina, but even trying to get a tax-exempt note sold at this value, even to an institutional buyer, they're really not that interested in it right now. A lot of people don't have taxable income for which they need tax-exempt income. So
Okay.
they were very, this is kind of where the market is for a deal of this nature. You know, you'd think it would be more like 4% given the market conditions, but we couldn't find any takers. And I think it's a reasonable thing to do for the seller given the good deal we're getting on the purchase price.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Self.
Thank you. Well, this isn't related to the project. I think you've done a good job structuring it, but I see it as a little bit of gaming the system, where this fellow, instead of receiving $40,000 in cash that would be taxable as the additional sales price, he's making a gift back to you, so therefore he's not only not having to pay tax on the 40, but then he is getting a tax deductible gift of 40. And you know, as a taxpayer, I think if you were to do this with a private individual, you'd have IRS knocking on your door. And I know you don't, so don't take this as me pointing at you for doing anything wrong. I realize it's in the system. It's just a comment about the system itself. Thank you.
Well, I would just remark that part of our tax system is a system by which private individuals are incentivized to give charitable donations, including to the city's housing program, which is an important, I think, cause, and I hope that because of arrangements like this, that other private individuals will be incentivized to also participate in such a manner, especially considering that we do have at least $8 million that's sitting in our set-aside account that we have not been able to use to yet build or acquire the housing that the people of the city need. Mr. Pearson.
Yeah, if I could address Councilwoman Self's comment. This particular seller is an interesting gentleman. He says, I enjoy paying my taxes. This country's been good to me. I don't think he's going to take advantage of this particular deduction. And the fact of the matter, there's not a real estate commission involved. I'm not sure that it's going to be purely eligible. And he has not asked us to complete the required IRS forms regarding the gift, and I don't think he will. It's there for him, and that's between he and his accountant to pursue. But I did want to clarify in this case, I don't think the seller is going to be availing himself to that potential. And it's still subject to IRS review, and that's his issue to resolve, not ours. Okay,
Okay, can I get a motion from the committee?
I'll move the staff recommendation to go forward with the loan.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Recommendation's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Kiefer. No other items, Mr. Samara. Thank you. This meeting's adjourned.